Have you heard about this personal and professional podcast?
Coaching in Session with your host,
Michael Rearden.
All right, Joe. How's everything going?
Yeah, really good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. So we're just going to be having just a general conversation today about your work and your story because I liked your story and I think many people are struggling with addiction today. So, it could be from anything. I know your uh, addiction is different than maybe someone who's having a porn addiction or maybe a social media addiction. I mean, but addiction is still something that might not benefit them in its totality. So, like looking at how you recovered and how you help people with the mindset, I think is going to be important today. So let's just start off with, just introducing yourself to the world and how you help people.
Yeah, so my name is Joe Jacobson. I'm from Portland, Oregon, and I'm 35 years old now. I spent, from my late teens, early 20s onward, basically just escaping really any distress. I didn't realize I was doing it. Originally it started with drinking. There's a lot of alcoholism, so to speak, in my family, but not that I really necessarily even fully believe in the addiction model anymore, but I was just really susceptible to messing with my reward systems. And so just kind of found myself getting nowhere in life. Was in the sales field for a really long time, still am. But I reached my mid 30s and kind of had nothing to show for it. And it was just becoming too painful to stay the same. I had also started using methamphetamine and other drugs. It started with cocaine, and I always kind of wanted to try everything for one reason or another. But yeah, it was, I had ADD, so to speak. So I kind of felt like meth was somehow helping me. And in some regards, when you sit down and work on music for 16 hours, it's easy to say like, oh wow, my ADD's fixed, but it just comes with the whole host of just horrific downsides. And I'd struggled with anxiety and depression for that entire time. I worked with therapists. I'd been to mental institutions twice for suicidal depression, two different rehabs, and really nothing was working because it wasn't addressing really the main issue, which is self-worth. I just wasn't putting in the work. The work will instill the work, and I just wasn't putting in any work to feel better. And so that's why the daily habits that I teach now are so simple. They're not easy, but they're the simplest thing ever. It's early wake up, it's weight training, reading and reflecting self-development material, tracking your macronutrients, and dropping all vices. And so through those just 5 daily habits, I mean, my life has changed dramatically. And then, I'm hoping to continue to inspire people to do the same with just a very easy blueprint that, once it gets ingrained into your daily habits, it does become easy. Like I pop out of bed even on just a couple hours of sleep now. It's not an issue. So yeah, and it makes every single element of your life better because throughout the whole day you're disciplined in what you're eating and how much you're eating and everything. So new old problems your current problems become old problems. Like drugs and alcohol used to be hard for me to not do. When you're tracking your macros and you go to your parents' house, and my mom's Italian, she just has just so much food, and it's all amazing, and you can't have any of it. Like you realize like, well, wow, it was not as hard not to drink as this is. So it's just kind of new problems arise as you keep leveling up.
Very true. One of the things I wanted to begin with is our story. Because growing up, my dad, my father was an alcoholic. He would drink, I don't like a lot of beer, and he would always be drunk. One of the things I thought, growing up is like, I guess it's, this is what you do as an adult, especially as like a man, like typically men look for other men as their examples and role models. So whether good or bad, that's typically what happens. So when I moved out by myself and I was like, well, we got to have beer in the fridge because that's what men do, right? And then every Friday I'll have one or two beers. It wasn't like getting drunk or anything, because I did that when I was 2021, and I did like a 6 month a span of going out and drinking and partying and things like that. And I realized like this is not a flex, like this is not fun. And then I just realized, like, even when I was living by myself, I would have a beer or two and just sit on the sofa. And I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, what is the purpose of this? Like, I'm not getting anywhere. Like, I don't even need this beer. Like, this beer does nothing for me. But then I started to look at, why do I have these habits? It wasn't something that, I said, oh, I enjoy doing this. It was something that I learned from. So I learned from my dad, I learned from society. Do you think that the way the world is moving, many men are learning the wrong things?
100%. I mean, you look all throughout the 20th century, and that was essentially the rite of passage for men, was drinking, and that was part of the camaraderie, part of the workforce. It was, in my opinion, obviously diving into like the reward system of, okay, the day's over, now let's reward ourselves. But yeah, it does. Alcohol has done horrific damage to entire generations. I know a lot of the issues that Europeans had, a lot of historians believe might have something to do with fetal alcohol syndrome, because back in the Middle Ages, the water was so dirty, you just had to drink alcohol. And then we're like the most violent, kind of descendant or whatever, race. But yeah, it was definitely our rite of passage in the 20th century. And I mean, nowadays, I would say a lot of it has to do with food now, or, with, at least in America, with just over 70% being overweight or obese. So, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of our mentorship has dissipated within the country for sure. Like, not to, blame my parents at all, but they always made drinking look really fun. Like, they would throw really good parties, and so that definitely plays into it for sure. And they know that, but yeah. And we're in desperate need of better male role models nowadays. I think we're always right on the tipping point of civilization going really poorly or really well. Like, if you look at the industrial age and World War I, or if you look at the what would you even call it, the subatomic age, right, like technological age, I guess, and World War II, and we're right on the cusp of potentially utopia with all of our technological advancements nowadays. But we've also never been closer to just full scale self annihilation. And I think that the tipping point is going to be our own personal development to influence those around us in our immediate circle. Because it's almost like we're a swing state, like every vote counts. And if we're at either a high frequency or a low frequency, low frequency is when you just have chaos, looting, crime, murder, if the government were to malfunction essentially due to some sort of, what would you call it, crisis, or there'll be enough people that are operating from a higher frequency that we can get through it essentially. So it's really, I didn't realize until I started my self growth process how important it is. I kind of thought my life was meaningless, and so it didn't really matter if I live my life to the fullest. Like, what's my life? My life's nothing. But then when I started this journey of self development, and I realized it was helping other people, because I'm posting all the time, like on Instagram, post my day stories and pictures, reels of almost everything. Yeah, once I realized it was starting to help people in their lives, it's like, oh, okay, my life's not as worthless as I thought. It's really easy to think our lives are meaningless because we're one of 8 billion, but we're a lot more valuable than we think, and our decisions nowadays are going to echo throughout the future, and so every action counts.
And as you said, we're always on the cusp for greatness. And in a sense, we self sabotage when we get close to it, because the pressure of that perfect moment or perfect state of being is almost too much for the mind to handle. Because what if we lost it all? Oh my God, right? Like, think of a person who was the high school superstar, everyone loved him, right? The girls loved him, teachers loved him, and then now this individual is maybe working a 9 to 5 job and maybe not the best worker, and his coworkers don't necessarily enjoy working with him because he's a slacker, maybe, right? Because he's still living in this grandiose reality of his past.
Yeah, he peaked.
Yeah. And in a sense, we reach that greatness and we can call it the golden era, the golden age. We look at those times as the best times of our life. But the reality is, just because those were the best time of our life, it doesn't mean that we can't make new best times. Many people, they live within their limits. And when a person wants to excel past those limits, typically it happens in the roughest moments of their life. They hit rock
Hmm.
bottom, they have a trauma, death, etc. That is typically when a person changes. But there is another option. A person can change just because they're not satisfied fully with where they are, and they don't have to wait for a big trauma or
Yeah,
anything in their
correct.
life. What was the changing point for you to say, you know what, I'm done with this, addictive type of mindset and, this low self worth? Like, what was that changing point for you?
Yeah, great question. Because I have had so many rock bottoms, and they just keep getting worse and worse. A lot of it had to do, well, I wasn't really dating a whole lot during my addictions. A lot of my relationships would end pretty quickly. And I'd met a girl who was definitely a lot more patient with me, but also kind of had we were sort of a toxic, codependent relationship. And, it just it lasted longer than it should have in its toxic state. But it just kept going. We kept breaking up, and she would have a lot of patience with me trying to get clean and sober, but I would be so depressed, and I would just be gone, my personality. And so, and that didn't sit well with her either. So it was like, okay, well, which is it? Like, what do you want? And so it was kind of like a breakup that was sort of one of the last straws. And it wasn't necessarily something I wanted to get back per se, because I think we were kind of toxic, but it was, I mean, I had so many wake up calls that I was just ignoring. I'd also known this message for a really long time. I'd been ignoring my conscience, and what could have been something really special was just plagued from the beginning. And so, oh, and I actually did just think of another big so it was part breakup. Also, I'm a door-to-door solar salesman as well, and I have been in sales for a really long time, so I'm used to being able to keep it together, like on no sleep, things like that. I can typically still connect, and I have the script down really well. So I would be at these people's doorsteps trying to, set an appointment for solar, but I just felt like disconnected from what I was saying, and I could kind of tell. I could see them sort of looking at me like where it wasn't all being put together. Like they're like, okay, do you have a card? It sounds good, but like, do you have a card? And so I just kind of knew that even though I was saying the right things, that I couldn't really express it the right way, and I just knew that it was off. But I knew how big of an opportunity this was, and how much money there is to be made in solar. And I was like, man, I got to get my shit together like now. And then did. So it was a breakup and work related. I knew I had a amazing opportunity because I'd been a really good salesman for a really long time. It's one of the things I've spent for sure 10,000 hours doing. And so I knew I had a amazing opportunity in front of me, and I had to get myself right. And then there's actually another thing with that. So when you go door to door, my boss had said, the doors will reveal yourself to you. And I didn't really know what that meant, to be honest. I knew it had something to do with adversity. Adversity introduces a man to himself. But he's like, the doors will introduce yourself to you. And I was getting really angry with these people, with these homeowners, because I'm just setting up a time for us to give them free information. I'm not even really the salesman. So I was getting mad at them for not wanting the information, like for saying denying the appointment. And I'm like, man, why do I hate them so much? I really only want them. I really will only like them if they are doing what I want. And then I was like, well, what I want them to do is help themselves. And I was like, wait, do I even help myself? And then I realized I was actually mad at myself. Like they opened the door, but I'm looking at me, you know. So the doors introduced me to me, and I was like, man, I need to help myself because that's what I'm really mad at. And then it was go time after that. And then now it's just I walk around with so much like love and gratitude that really no one can, even if people are horribly rude on the doors, I'm just like I shake it off within microseconds. So yeah, a couple of those things, work and relationship, but certainly the adversity of sales introduced me to me, and I didn't like what I saw.
They say anger is within all of us, especially when it comes to young boys, teens, men in general, where we have this great capacity for violence. And one of the main reasons why, men went off to war was because we have that proponent within us. We are the protectors and the providers, right? That's what we have been doing for millennia. In our world, especially today, we have a very complacent way of being. There's not much room for angered violence unless you're going off to war or in times of war. So we have this great capacity for destruction, but we don't have an outlet to use it properly. There is a way to turn that anger into power and to use it as a propellant, almost like a fuel source, diesel, regular gas, right? To get us to where we need to be. But it doesn't even have to be where we have to belittle people. We have to have that anger aspect. We could do it full of humility. Many men run away from this anger. What tends to happen with this anger is they begin to set that or bear those fangs inward instead of outward. So we become angry at ourselves for not doing what we should be doing. In a sense, we escape. We look for things that are the escapes for us. So men will go fishing, they'll play video games, they will go out with their friends and drink and do all of these things to escape the reality that this power that we have should be utilized for growth and abundance. And one of the things that many men should lean into is a brotherhood. And they should also find those brotherhoods that have strong daily habits, as you said, waking up in the morning, going to the gym, physical fitness. If you want to be an entrepreneur, have your regular 9 to 5, it doesn't matter as long as you're doing something that you can call your mission. Mission is an easy way for us to kind of put all of this together, right? To neatly wrap it. A man should have a mission. What is your mission today?
Yeah, that is really a great question and great lead up because I think a lot of men, especially, I mean, I was kind of quieted down my whole life. You know, I was kind of the class clown, pretty rambunctious. Um, and so I was kind of told my whole life that I was doing it wrong, and that did certainly turn myself inward. And I think men innately want to be a provider, want to be a protector, and especially with more women in the workforce kicking our asses in terms of home ownership and all sorts of, I mean, you name it, they're slaughtering us. We do retreat from the dating pool. I know I spent years not looking to date because I just knew I was like, what do I have to offer them? And to an extent, I was right because I wasn't putting in any work. And so the question being, what is my mission? You asked what my mission is. I think that with that anger and that ability to become really violent, I think that's actually a really important component that men should have and foster and know that they're capable of doing. Because there's nothing worse, dude, that's sort of what they're trying to create with a lot of us. We're just, a lot of the just easygoing, no fights, no, oh, whatever you say, honey. Yeah, sure. Like that. I knock on those doors all the time where it's like the man's like, oh, yeah, I'll ask my wife if it's like, or she handles that. Like, I'm sure she does. So with weight training, you can really tap into that, like, that energy, that masculine rage, and directed in a really positive way that gives you a lot of confidence, a lot of self-worth. And I would say my mission is to help other men that have been led astray their entire lives to guide them back towards like self-worth, because they're coming from every angle when it comes to, I don't know, like ultra feminists or just the general education system. There's a lot of involuntary and voluntary anti-male sentiments that, I mean, I'm not a victim because I choose not to be a victim. Like, it's up to men to navigate the world. So I could give a shit about these. Yeah. But a lot of people will, I mean, I fell into that trap for sure for a long time, but it's my responsibility to get out of that. So yeah, and I mean, I would say my mission is to help as many people see how important their lives are and give them a really simple blueprint to follow on a daily basis that will, lead them towards the meaning of their lives, which is for sure to like overcome their fears, master their days, live life to the fullest, to be honest with themselves. It's really easy to start lying to yourself. That's one of the negotiation tactics we all have. Well, I'll do it tomorrow. When you just start mastering your day through stackable wins, daily habits, it'll echo out from your surroundings to larger scale, very large scale communities. So I just want to be helpful and positive, really. I spent a long time being internally negative. So now I just want to be outwardly positive.
I have an episode coming out next week about how we label children. And one of the things that the school system is very good at is labeling boys. He has ADHD, he has ADD, he has anger problems. And at some point, it becomes our identity. And I've worked with some of the most loving, caring young men in the world, but they were also some of the most violent men in the world. Why? Why? Because they were told to be. You know, they were told that they have a problem. Looking at their support system, it was a bunch of women. Not to say that they didn't care for these young men, but it's very different. I wholeheartedly believe a man or a boy, doesn't matter, will always look for another boy or man to emulate. Typically, a boy is going to look at their peers for some point, and then at some point, they're going to look for a man, father figure, grandfather, uncle, gang banger around the corner that got a bunch of money. It doesn't matter. That's what they're going to gravitate toward, right? No matter how many single moms that are killing it out there, your boy is going to find another man to emulate, good or bad. You're better off giving him a good option. That is the struggle for men, right? We have so much healing to do. We feel, or what I can say from, working with a good amount of them, is that they feel like they have to do it by themselves. They feel like they can't trust anyone, right? They feel like no one else has these problems, right? Their situation is unique. Yet, what has happened is they have been lumped into a pool of individuals that are not going to be anything in their life. And that is what they believe. As you said, like your self-worth, like we have to realize that, because when we look at the scale of, men and women, like as you said, like women are killing it with their careers and, going out and traveling and being financially independent. They're living a life that they were told to live, versus men are trying to live the life that is most meaningful to them, where they're trying to continue with those traditional values that they would like to believe in. Yet in a modern world, it's almost like you're being counterintuitive or you're working backwards, because it's like you're trying to do these things. And I know one of the narratives that women preach is, where are all the good men? And the reality is there's good men everywhere. There's a man, good man at Walmart. There's a good man at the gas station. There's a good man at 7-Eleven. And the reality is, what defines a good man, right? Because a good man would probably be someone who would come home, take care of, his family, protect and provide, do all of these things. Yet women will say, well, you have to make more than me or equal to me. you have to look a certain way, 6 feet tall, six-pack ab, drive this type of car, live this type of lifestyle. But the reality is, success and happiness is not about materialistic goods and appearance all the time. This beauty standard has been sold to women for so long. um for example, do men wear makeup? No. Right? We don't wear makeup. Why? Because the beauty standard is for them, it's not for us. How about when it comes to clothing? Like my wife, like she probably has 70% more clothes than me, right? And it's because this is something that was instilled within her. Like, it's whatever. She can have as much clothes as she wants, but it was instilled within her. Yet we can be happy wearing the same pair of tennis shoes that we have for 5 years. They have some holes in them, but we still love those things. We can have a old beat up car that, old pickup truck or something like that, and it gets us to A to B. We have a different type of mindset. And it gets skewed when we mix our mindset that we would like to have, that is in alignment to our happiness and our fulfillment, mixing it with what the world and society is telling us. How can men start to compartmentalize the nuances of the modern world, because everyone is saying what you need to do, who you need to be. And if it's away from the person that you are currently, you can run away. It's like, oh my God, I'm not this person. It could cause that problem. But then it can also cause a problem of, I'm so far from that person, I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, and it's going to be really important for to know like who you want to be. So it's easier if you figure out who you want to be, not like necessarily what you want to do. Because I didn't even know I wanted to coach other people. I just knew I wanted to be clean and sober and get ripped. Um, and and then a lot of other like the work brings clarity, and as to what to do. I think that I mean, we're always put into a box by various groups of our elders, so it's important to not just fully succumb to everything they say. And most of us don't. I mean, think of that's why we rebel a lot of the time. And then, yeah, what you'd mentioned about the things men and women are intrinsically interested in, like, with the reason we don't care as much about um, looks or things at first is it gives us satisfaction to provide. To, evolutionarily, we would bring home food and keep people alive that way. And then, when it came time to pick a mate, we'd pick the most beautiful mate. So that's why women probably are like. And so I think it's just important to really, the more you can know about where humans evolved from, I think the better. You'll understand a lot of like what's happening to you by being on the computer for 10 hours at a time. You'll kind of know more about how it's affecting our brain waves, various things like that. So I would say it's just really important to get in touch with like I just wouldn't even really pay too much attention as to what kind of box people were trying to put us in or anything like that. Like the past is the past. It's just important to start doing the work now, and the work will bring clarity. That it's physically impossible to be doing the work, like to master each day by stacking wins and not and find and just not find progress. That would just be impossible because you're raising your frequency, you're aligning yourself with a higher outcome. So you're once you start vibrating at a higher frequency for those outcomes, like those outcomes just attract. You don't even have to chase them. They start coming to you. So I don't think it's good to dwell too much on what we were told to. It's good to acknowledge it and try to understand as much about yourself as possible in the past. I think it's totally fine to analyze that. But we're so academic these days, and we're not told to just start putting in the work. Like I suffered from anxiety and depression for decades, and I was just trying to think my way out of it. I didn't want to do the hard work, and so all these books written about melancholic moods and, emotional intelligence and stuff like that. Look at the authors, and I don't know, unless they're in amazing shape or something, like we probably shouldn't listen to them, because the only way you're going to be really mentally sound is being physically sound, and it's just yeah, we're too academic nowadays when it comes to, like, here's an example. My therapist said I had distress intolerance. So I would drink, when I was bored, I would drink when I was angry. I was intolerant to distress. That's just called being a pussy. Like, this is just that simple. So, I mean, you can come up with flowery words for not doing the work, or you can just do the work. And once you start doing the work, like, all the other problems in the world, like, start slipping away, because the world is not as it is as you are. So once you better yourself, the world betters itself as well. So yeah, it's important not to get too caught up in the,
Yeah.
in all of the sociopathy,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no.
sociology.
Yeah, close enough. Very true. I've worked with many people, coming from all walks of life. And what they say, men especially, is the men that do therapy and then they do mindset coaching after, they say this is so much better because men love action. We just don't like to sit there and talk about our emotions and hear what's wrong with us. We want to be someone who's like, okay, we got a problem. Let's figure out the solution. So if we need to get our butts in the gym, okay, let's do that, right? Action. Like we need to do stuff that's going to get us moving. And therapy has its place, but when we're trying to enhance ourselves in our life, we have to give ourselves a different direction. And I have found that, having a mentor, having a coach, doesn't matter what walk of life. We just need someone who can see our blind spots because as I said early on, we are those lone warriors where we think we can do it by ourselves when the reality is we should be looking for our brotherhood. And the brotherhood, it doesn't have to be 50 to 100 people and like, oh, like we got all these people now. Like, listen, you need maybe two people, 2 to 5 people, and you're good, right? You just need people who have your back, you have their back, and you know that no matter what, thick and thin, you guys are good, right? That is important to start to incorporate into your life as with your daily habits, right? Do everything that you have to do, eat, fitness, you have to work, right? But then also build yourself up. Personal development, reading books and stuff like that, that's all great, but if you're not applying them, it's just kind of like a hopeful wishful thinking, like Superman's going to come save you when you are Superman. You are the person that's going to save you and give you the reality that you would like to have and that you would like to see. And if you
There
are
are
a
a lot of
family,
those. Oh yeah, go ahead.
yeah, and if you are a family man, for example, you have to be that superhero for your family, for your wife, and for your children, because that's going to set the tone for them to say, "Hey, this is what Dad did." And as I said early on, like when I looked at my dad and he was drinking, I said, "That is what a man does." But the reality is, if you are a man that's unhealthy, unfit, and unstable, you are just setting that tone for them to repeat that process. So you have to give them something better to look at. So you were saying something?
There's always those people that read like 100 personal development books in a year, and like they're online being like, I gotta admit, I didn't do shit. It didn't do anything for me because you weren't putting anything into action. And then do you remember the last thing you said?
Well, I was talking about just like Superman and being the hero and being accountable and looking at your life.
Yeah. So with I mean, mentors or something I had to seek out. And I didn't fall into, 'cause I guess when you mentioned learning stuff from our parents and learning stuff from our dads, like it's really important to fix ourselves, especially if we have children, because we don't really realize that we're putting our pain onto them. Like if dad has always been out of shape and got bullied as a kid, and so now he's still overweight and he's not doing anything about it, and now he's sending his son to school overweight to experience his same pain. That is, so horrible. But they don't really realize what they're doing something that could be considered child abuse. Because it's important for us to become the men we admire and then give them to the world. I didn't really realize it myself until I started the process, but there really is no other purpose to life than healing yourself and then helping others do the same. Because what does my musical aspirations, for instance, have to do? How is that going to really benefit 200, 300 years from now? Maybe someone's listening to the music, people will enjoy it. In terms of you look back at history, like the most impactful people, they were working more with energy, whether it was negative or positive. So if you look at Jesus or if you look at Gandhi, these were all really the people that were just trying to impart positive energy upon a situation. And then on the other side, you obviously have the horrible dictators, things like that. But that also comes from energy too, because guilt and shame is the lowest frequency on the human emotion frequency chart. Right above that would be like anger, fear. And at the very top, you're going to find love, acceptance, peace, enlightenment. And we don't really realize how detrimental our emotions can be on our micro level, just us. But if you have like a whole population that is operating at a low frequency, like the terrible things that can come out of that, we've actually seen, after World War I, when Germany got blamed for the war, and the Treaty of Versailles basically, blamed them, and the whole country was just shit on and operating out of shame and guilt. That's where dark things can attach to those. That's why when you see people that are just so far gone on drugs and alcohol, they're almost like possessed, like demonically possessed, pretty much. Well, when we saw that in Germany, a whole country operating out of shame and guilt, we got the Third Reich, that came out of that. So it's incredibly important to know that the frequency you're operating at is either going to increase or decrease the mean of the population. So when you're positive, you're increasing our collective consciousness frequency. And when you're operating out of shame, guilt, fear, a lot of Americans operating out of fear and anger, you're decreasing that. And if it gets too low, that's when you see terrible things happen and we'll just start imploding on each other. And then if you increase your vibration and are actively working to show others the way as well, that's when we get renaissances, that's when we'll start, moving to other planets and stuff, because we instead of having $1 trillion a year defense budget, imagine what NASA could do with $1 trillion like a year. If we didn't have these issues that we do, though, where we could put our resources would be immense. So, but it all starts at the personal level. Hope I answered that question. Okay.
Yeah, no. This is not so much
Yeah.
of like questions. It's more of a discussion.
Yeah.
Like I don't like to interview people. Like I have a set of questions and I'm going to ask you these questions, and it's so boring that way.
Yeah.
Like I would rather just have a real conversation with an individual. That is more enticing, not only to me, but to the audience, because when, you and I are speaking, we can be honest and truthful. There are so many individuals that might be going through the same thing. They might be saying, you know what, I can relate to that. Or maybe, this is good wisdom for me to be paying attention to. Like if you have kids or something like that, like now you're like, okay, let me look at my actions. And I'm a father, I have a son. And I remember when he was like just one or something. And I remember like he has toys literally all over the house. And I'm just like moving the toys with my feet, right? So I'm like, this toy shouldn't be here in the walkway and things like that. And all of a sudden he starts kicking the toys. I'm like, Jesus, like every little thing.
Yeah.
Every little thing he's paying attention to. So of course, got to go to the gym, got to look good. And I remember like my dad growing up, he was in construction. And so he big guy, like huge muscles, things like that. But then at some point he stopped going to the gym. He stopped caring about his physical fitness and, his health and things like that. And in a sense, it's a blessing, but maybe more of a wake up call. for me to say, you can't stop no matter what. Like, even if you reach your goals in life, you don't stop. There's always
Right.
a goal beyond the goal. Just because
Yes.
you reach your physique that you wanted, you look in the mirror and you got your 8-pack or 10-pack abs, and you're like, I finally reached my goal weight. It doesn't stop. Just
No.
because you got to the goal, it doesn't mean it's over. There's always something you should be chasing.
Yeah.
And one of the things you should do, especially as a father, is you should be that role model that continually remains the person that your children or child will look up to and idolize. They should never have this aspect of dad used to or mom used to.
Hmm.
Or I remember when my dad was young or something like that, he was able to do all this stuff. Like, you should always be able to do all that stuff. All right. And you shouldn't show weakness to them, at least. Of course, you can have
Yeah.
your outlets. Like I said, brotherhoods are a great way. Coaches, I have men come and, they can be weak. It's fine. Right. Because I'm there to build them to be stronger. And it's okay for you to find these positive outlets. I don't recommend using your wife, but
Hmm.
here and there, I know people have different beliefs on that. I just don't believe it. It's better for you to find a coach, a mentor,
Hmm.
a brother, someone that you can rely on, a man. Women do this really well with each other. We should learn how to do it with each other also. And the more readily you can accept that, the more readily you're going to have a future that you can be proud of. So it's important that we defeat the cycle that we are in, and that if we want to change the frequency of our life, as you were saying, we have to be that person that implements the change.
Hmm.
So I think you are a wonderful person because you have gone through it. I love people who have been through the adversity. I don't like people who everything's perfect in their life, right? They
Yeah.
have a good mom, a good dad, come from money, right? They have all this
Hmm.
money, right? And they're like, yeah, I just want to do some mindset coaching because I thought it'd be fun. Like, no, no, no. Like,
Yeah.
like
No. Don't trust
we're
a
not
man
doing
without a
that.
dark
I
side.
I
Yeah.
want the person who's been bruised and battered, because
Hmm.
that person can help somebody
Yeah.
so much more readily than someone who has not gone through that adversity.
Yeah.
How can people find you?
So it's Instagram mainly that I'm building my business. It's Joe underscore Graham underscore program. So Joe Graham program, and just DM me. You can work with me on 1 month, 3 months, 6 month, 1 year level. It's $299 for 1 month, $750 for 3 months, $1299 for 6 months, or $2,000 for a year. You'll get daily exercises, which macros to follow on a daily basis, so you know what not to, yeah, what to eat and how much of it. There'll be a weekly coaching call on the weekends just to check progress and just hang out, basically ask any questions. And yeah, you just get, I'm in a community of like-minded individuals doing the same thing in their respective communities. So when you come and work with me, you just join an extremely positive community that, the trick is just to never stop, to love the process. And once you fall in love with these daily habits and what it does to you, then your emotions about, like, the early wake up. I get up at 3:30 in the morning now every day, even if I go to bed at midnight. And it's easy. I pop out of bed because it's not about how I feel in that moment when I'm waking up. It's how I'll feel later when I'm like, cool, I don't miss. This is dope. Like, I am
Mhm.
dope. I am crushing it. I'm not letting myself down. This is sick. And I joined a program. My mentor is Wes Watson, Watson underscore fit. And it's just incredibly important to know that he's never missing a day. Like, he'll never miss. So I never miss. So people want to start working with me. It's so much better when you have someone who's like, cool, I don't want to let them down. They're never missing. I'm not going to miss anymore. And then you're keeping promises to yourself. Your life changes so fast. I'm talking about it a matter of like days and weeks. You'll be a completely different person. So Joe Graham program.
I remember when I started to change my morning routine, and it was when I had I had hit rock bottom, and I was like, all right, tough moment in my life. What do I do about it? Well, got to wake up early. Woke up early, started to give my mind what it needed. I had like motivational stuff wake me up. So instead of an alarm beeping in my ear, it was
Yeah.
a it was a motivational speech, and it was
Nice.
on random. So I
Cool.
would wake up 4:30, 5 o'clock. I'm in the gym, and
Nice.
I'm just there, like just there, hour and a half sometimes, depending, because I had to be at work, I believe 7:38.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, like let me just fight my battle in the morning. It was like it was the
Hmm.
toughest battle for me because during the day, everything else seemed easy. It was like I did that morning routine and meal prepping and all that stuff. Like I did it all in the morning. And
Yeah.
so like my day was already created. It was like I know what I'm gonna eat, I know what I'm gonna do. And then the only thing I have to do when I had got back home was tidy up, clean up, and prepare for the
Yep.
next day. Did some journaling and some reading. And then it was like that pattern. It might not have been a life full of luxury of going out and partying and doing all of these glamorous things. And I did that, on the weekends. I would go out with girls and stuff like that. But that wasn't the highlight. The highlight of my week or my day was me waking up early and overcoming the challenge that I might not have felt like going, right? It might have been raining, it might have been cold, it might have been hot, whatever it was. I said it doesn't matter. And in your life, you have to do the things that matter the most, even when you don't feel like it. So if you don't feel like going to the gym, who cares? Do it anyway. If you don't feel like going to work, do it anyway. And that process is actually training your mind to develop in a way of you learn to love the things that are going to help you grow. And that is so important. So I do want to thank you, Joe, for coming on, talking about your story, talking about your work, and how you help individuals get into a new mindset and into a new life.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Michael, for having me. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Feel free to follow me, Joe _Graham _program. But yeah, no, it was great talking to you. I appreciate you having me on.